So we continue now on Open Matters with an interview with one of our consultants, William Brown. Hello, William Brown. How are you?
Hello. Very well. I feel alive. I feel alert, and I feel grateful.
I am glad you feel alive. That's
Yes.
that's always good for guests on this podcast. It's always a great start. So, William, we met, didn't we, a week or so ago at an event launching Setfords' participation in a scheme called Black Lawyers Matter.
Correct.
And we heard some wonderful stories, of which yours was one. I just wondered if you would sort of talk to us a little bit about why you wanted to get involved in that programme and what you hope personally to sort of get from it.
Okay. All right. So my journey started from when I was doing my LPC. I had the opportunity of having a mentor. Yeah. Okay. He guided me with my CV, interview techniques, and prior to that, it was a very daunting experience for me trying to navigate my way around, filling application forms and getting... Well, I didn't get any interviews, actually, prior to that. But having then met my mentor, he instilled in me some confidence. He showed me what I needed to do. And following on from that, I then got a training contract, and then I completed my training and became a solicitor. And I felt that I wanted to give something back. So then I enrolled in my alma mater, which was at the time called College of Law, but they're now University of Law. So I agreed to take on, to become a mentor for students every year. So I'd done that for about maybe 6 years, possibly maybe 7. And every year I'll accept a student. I will meet them in person for the first meeting. We introduce ourselves, and then following on from there, it was you didn't have to meet in person, so it was more telephone or emails and stuff like that.
You mentioned right at the beginning when you started talking there about confidence.
Okay.
And is that really where lots of the sort of the value comes in that sort of mentor-mentee relationship, do you think? Is it that sort of nervousness and that trepidation about things you don't know about?
Well, absolutely, yes. You are spot on, because if you come from the sort of background that I come from, and bearing in mind we're talking about black lawyers, so I'll have to sort of focus on that. There is a lack of... if you like, visibility, okay, of successful black lawyers. What do they look like? Okay, so having someone instill that confidence in me at a very crucial time was just spot on for me. And that meant, either succeeding or becoming one of the statistics of those who have a law degree but never went on to become lawyers.
And that is one of the statistics, isn't it? It's people who have started on that journey and for whatever reason have not sustained that journey.
Correct.
And that's probably down to a lot of things, but by and large the industry needs to do a lot of work, doesn't it, to sort of make itself more welcoming and much more inclusive. And that's the point of Black Lawyers Matter. Absolutely.
I mean, when you look at the stats, I think there's about only 3% of black lawyers amongst the thousands of lawyers that we have at the moment, and that is not a good enough representation. So being a mentor is a step. It's not going to solve the problem overnight, but we have to start the journey from somewhere.
Do you think, obviously the programme is, it works across many law firms and hopefully many, many more. But looking specifically at Setfords and its particular model of consultants, do you think there's a benefit there? Or how do you think your mentee will feel about your career choice now in law? Because it's certainly opened up, hasn't it, with like Setfords and other companies with similar models. Do you think there's a benefit there in terms of having another route, another career choice?
Yes, I think so. Well, for starters, the mentorship that I did before was more about students who were at the outset of their career, going to qualify. This is going to be slightly different for me because now I'm going to be working with someone who's already qualified, and that initial stage of your career is quite crucial in finding your feet, finding direction, and getting someone who can mentor you and point you in the right direction. So yes, this model is great. Consultancy is great, but whether or not it's ideal for someone who is just starting out, I very much doubt it.
Because of course you need those years of
experience. But having said that, and I like to think outside the box, so you could, for example, have a scenario where I could, for example, have someone who's maybe a year or two qualified to work with me as part of a team. So it could potentially work. It doesn't have to be the traditional route where you have to work in an office, and like a traditional office of, do you know what I mean? Not being a consultancy model, but traditional firm.
I mean, I only asked the question because someone actually asked me this morning.
Right.
We were talking about it, and they said, do you think the fee share firms, as we get sort of described outside of the business, is this a way of attracting sort of new young talent? And I said, well, not specifically, and just purely as you said, there's sort of that post-qualification experience is quite important. However, what it does do, I felt, was it shows a non-traditional. Shines a light on a non-traditional part of the legal sector. And I think sometimes it's that traditional, it sort of conjures up all sorts of sort of images in your mind of sort of quite stuffy law firms and perhaps quite intimidating law firms. And so, for someone meeting someone like you in a company like this, they might well get a whole different view of something that they didn't know existed. And it may not be a today thing, might not even be a tomorrow thing, but later down the line.
Gives them something to think about.
Absolutely.
Yes. And I think that's also part of mentoring, isn't it? To be able to give someone a vision, of where they might be in the next 5 or 10 years. Not necessarily today, but taking the steps, because you've got to plan it. If you're traveling abroad today, you book your ticket, you have a destination in mind firstly, and then you take the steps to get to the destination. And I see it as a similar sort of that's a really good way of looking at it, actually. Do you feel there's a little bit of reverse mentoring as well? Will you get something back personally from your engagement with your mentee? Absolutely. So I'm gonna be 20 years PQE soon. So 2007. So okay, not far off. Probably 16, 17. And a lot has changed from when I first, was a trainee. Actually, so 20 years since I was a trainee, roughly. And then you become a newly qualified lawyer. Things have changed a lot. So interacting with someone who's at the beginning of their career now gives me an opportunity to have an insight into the obstacles that they are facing. Is it the same as what I faced, or is it evolved? And what else can we do to help? So I think I'm going to walk away with something back, not just me giving.
I would say so. I think there's an enrichment, isn't there, on both sides?
On both sides,
yes. A good transaction.
You can't jump into the water and not get wet.
Okay. That's a good way of looking at it. That's a great way of looking at it. I think you like your quotes. I'm going to come to that in a little minute. So the work you do for Setfords, very much property work, commercial and residential.
Correct.
Has that been your whole career in property, or did you start somewhere else? How did you arrive there?
A very interesting question. I was thinking about it when I was coming here. I've done a variety of stuff. So I've done immigration. I used to go to the Home Office for interviews with clients. I've been to Belmarsh prison to see murderers and go through discovery documents, in readiness for trials at the Old Bailey. I've done a bit of family. I've done a bit of landlord and tenant litigation, employment law. So I've done various things that have enriched me to bring me where I am now. But at the core of me, I'm a property lawyer. I like to say I'm a transactional lawyer. But mostly property based.
Is that because there's a sort of a completeness to it that you can kind of, you don't have to wait years for things to, come to a conclusion? These are things you can kind of deal with quite quickly. You like to get things done, and you are sort of a, make it happen, and then, next matter type lawyer. What's the?
No, I think it hasn't been by design, and that's one of the things I like to convey to people that I mentor, that you've just got to embrace change. Okay, because along the journey you're going to face so many changes, some good, some bad, and it's how you embrace it that determines how you move forward.
Well, that's a good segue into. I saw a quote on your profile actually.
Okay, all right, here we go.
So, limits, like fears, are often just an illusion. Where does that come from? Is that sort of something you live by?
Yes, I do live by it, and I'm not quite sure where I saw it, but it wasn't my quote.
No.
But I did see it somewhere, and it resonated with me, and I thought, this is me really. And throughout life, you're going to have limitations, you're going to have ceilings, you're going to have obstacles, and are you going to accept it?
Yeah. It sounds to me like the kind of quote that you would associate with an entrepreneur, somebody who wants to get something done, has a kind of an ambition and wants to sort of see it through. Is that in you, do you think?
Absolutely. So I've always wanted to have my own law firm, okay, but you have these pipe dreams at the outset of your career. But then your experiences will shape your thinking and will shape your dreams. And so in 2012, I decided I'd had enough of being employed. It was simply because I had to keep going to try and get a raise in my salary. And I thought, if you're not going to appreciate me, so I stopped. I tendered in my resignation.
Okay.
But without knowing what I was going to do. And then I went to the partners at the time, and I said, how about I become a consultant? There was no consultant at the firm at the time, so I was the first consultant. Okay. There was no model in place, so they had to make room for me.
Okay.
And sometimes that's the way life is. You've got to force life to make room for you.
Yeah.
Based on your dreams and your mindset.
And your willpower.
And your willpower.
What you want to achieve.
What you want to achieve.
That's a disruptor's mentality.
Yes,
yeah.
yes. So I went in, and by the way, I couldn't engage with any clients of the firm. So I had to start from the scratch.
Right.
Get my own clients in. Okay.
They made it hard for you.
Very incredibly hard.
But you made it work.
I made it work. And it takes me to another point, which I want to mention. I know you are doing the interview, but I think I'll mention this.
Please, just do.
It's about relationships, okay? It's crucial.
Yeah.
If you're going to make it in the industry, or not just the legal, but pretty much everywhere, you need to build your relationships. Because looking back now, it's 10 years, 11 years since I first became a consultant, I realized that it's the relationships that I've formed along the lines that have brought me where I am now.
Yeah.
And so for my mentees, I say, look, okay, just build relationships. Build it at your level, build it the level ahead of you, build it the level beneath you.
Yeah.
So that you're well-rounded and you can interact different levels.
They're lucky they're going to get some good advice, and also someone that kind of has an idea and wants to see that through. I mean, those are kind of rare qualities, and so absolutely good things. Just sort of before we move on, your that sort of entrepreneurial element. I mean, when we're sort of trying to attract consultants to Setfords, it's often a kind of a message that we're sort of trying to kind of get across to encourage people to do that. Do you feel that's something that's served by being a consultant at Setfords? What do you feel about being a consultant here compared to where you started out on that journey?
Okay, I think one of the main differences is that Setfords is really set up for consultants. Okay, so they've put in the structures, they've got the people, they've got the expertise, they've got the resources, and so you have the tools to be able to do what you want to achieve as an entrepreneur lawyer. One of the things I learned very earlier on in my career is that you're a businessman first before even you're a lawyer, because the partners are not going to be happy with you just being able to do the law. You've got to be able to have a business acumen, and that's what will help you progress. And so that has always been at the back of at the forefront of my mind when I'm engaging with clients or people.
And clearly, why you're a success at what you do. So that's.
I'll leave that for the clients to say, not me.
Well, apparently they say great things, and you get a lot of repeat business. So that's
well,
good.
that is true. That is true. And if you're going to do it, then I think you try and give an excellent service.
Yeah.
It won't always be the way you expect it to go, but you need a thick skin, and so you've got to be able to accept criticisms, and learn.
All good stuff, William. All good stuff. Before we let you go,
okay.
And we will let you go, don't worry. We like to play a little game on this podcast,
okay.
Which you're not forewarned about, so
no.
It will be quite interesting.
Trick me.
It's called "What's in Your Backpack."
Oh,
and so the backpack in this context is a symbol of remote working.
Okay.
And so I like to ask what you might put in your backpack, assuming, of course, that in there's some standard stuff like a laptop and a phone and a charger and probably a pen and a notebook. So count those normal things as in there.
Okay.
I'd like to know what 3 things you would have in your backpack. 2 of them could fit in the backpack, which would be good. 1 of them can just defy the laws of physics and be anything you think that would be good for you. So 3 things in your backpack. William, go.
Right. Okay. Let me think. I work from home, so I don't tend to carry a backpack. But on my journey here, I had a backpack, and what's in the backpack? I've got a bottle of water.
Okay. Bottle of water, good. Hydration, important.
Yes. I carry a book to read if the opportunity arises. And of course, I've got my phone, which has got photos of my family, and I get inspiration from looking at the photos, seeing my wife, my kids, and that gives me a sense of direction, a sense of
some purpose
yeah. And drive. It drives me. Yeah,
some motivation.
Yeah.
I mean, those are 3 great things. I mean, water's very important. Having a book to read, there's so much you can learn.
Just to switch off a bit.
But that last one, people have chosen cars and a racehorse, but actually, I think your choice there says an awful lot about you.
Right.
And how you move forward in your career as a lawyer. So it's great to speak to you. Thank you so much for your time and joining us on Open Matters.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, William.
Thank you.
So joining me now on a regular item on Open Matters, the Setfords Podcast, have to get that bit in. We're going to talk to an unsung hero from around Setfords, just to give people tuning in, viewing, listening, however you may have found us, just some insights in what goes on behind the scenes here. So I am sitting across from Hamish Savin, who works in our recruitment team at Setfords. Hi Hamish, how are you?
Hi, yeah, very well, thank you. Very well.
Good to have you on Open Matters.
Thank you for having me.
That's okay. All very polite, isn't it? Which is very important, let's face it, especially in your job, I suppose, when you're constantly talking to people you may have never met before. Tell us a little bit about, recruitment at Setfords, which is probably slightly different from recruitment elsewhere. What's a sort of a typical kind of day look like for you?
Yeah, well, you're quite right. It is a different type of recruitment in that we're not recruiting people for an employed role. You know, we are moving people into a self-employed role. So rather than, recruitment in the general sense, it's more about, selling the lifestyle, I suppose, of being a consultant and all the benefits that come with that. Typical day, tends to be speaking with a variety of people at different levels of their journey, looking at consultancy, some of which have never come across it before. So that entails a lot more of the explanation as to what it's all about, what they get, potentially what they don't get as well, what they might be leaving behind in an employed role there. Others are already consultants, might have spoken to us previously, and for those individuals it's much more about what we do and what sets us apart from the other fee share firms out there on the market, which is quite a long list, I would say. Most comprehensive support in the industry being one of them, and going through all the facts of the matter. Basically, it tends to be my job.
Is it quite daunting? Because I suppose you might be talking to people who have been in a legal career for a long time, might be at sort of top of their game, might be a partner somewhere. How do you feel about doing that? And that doesn't, no disrespect, it's just when I first met you and I joined, I thought wow, what an impressive young man, and so how do you sort of deal with that? I mean, you come across very well, but what's your approach?
Personally, no, I don't find it daunting. People who are speaking to us have already taken the first step of actually even considering it, to be quite honest with you. So in one sense, I'm confident in what we do and what we offer. So that backs up a lot of my confidence when speaking to these lawyers. I truly believe in what we do as well. So do I find it daunting? No. Do I find it challenging? Yes, on occasion, especially when you do get to people at partner level. They are very comfortable. They've gone through the general way in which you get to a partner, which is typically 10 years plus working in the industry, working in a very archaic industry in many senses as well. And what we do is so different that explaining that is a bit of a challenge, but daunting, I wouldn't say so.
And in terms of the sort of the hot buttons, I suppose, that people are, why they're looking to make a move and why they might be considering consultancy. Obviously, we're in the marketing and my day job, marketing and comms, we sort of talk about, remote working and flexibility and things. Is it those things? Is that what you're feeling? Is that still, the top of the list things? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, very much depends on who you're speaking to. So from anyone working in traditional practice, those are the reasons people want to move into consultancy or want to speak to Setfords. It tends to be threefold, I would say. Number one is the autonomy over how you work. I would say, a lot of time when you're working in traditional practice, unless you're at partner level, you're told what to do and how to do it. Here, there is a lot more free will, and you can pick and choose the type of work you want to take on. Another aspect is the flexibility as well, choosing when you work and where you work from, for that matter. The large majority of countries across the world do support our systems, and therefore you can work from there. As an example, we've got people based in Canada, in the Indian Ocean, Africa, Asia, Australia. We have people based all over the place nowadays.
Yeah.
And the final reason would also be the uncapped earning potential. Traditional practice, again, unless you're partner level, you're taking home roughly 30% of your billings. Here it's a minimum of 50%, but it can be up as high as 80% of your billing. So it's more of a three-pronged approach, I would say. That's for people coming from traditional practice, as I say. Anyone coming from other consultancies, they come to us for the support that we offer, which is all part of our package as well. No extra cost, no extras at all, unlimited as well. So what they're already getting elsewhere, we can pretty much supercharge that, and it means that they can grow their practice even more.
Why? I mean, should there be a bigger queue of people looking at that? Because it sounds so enticing, but what do you think? I mean, we're dealing with people who have been in a traditional industry, and I guess in many respects, even though we've been around a long time, it's still quite a newish concept. And so what do you think there's a sort of people are a little bit afraid about taking that big step, that leap?
Yeah, well, put it this way, Eric. I mean, we've been doing this for 14 years now, since 2009. In the grand scheme of things, that's nothing compared to traditional practice. It's still a work in progress, trying to get the message out there. We've come on leaps and bounds since the dawn of remote working, which many traditional practices are now moving back on and getting people back into the office. Yeah. That definitely increased the attention on the remote working fee share model. But look, as I say, 13 years compared to centuries of traditional practice. We're not going to get everyone knocking on our door straight away, but we're getting there.
And you work really hard. I mean, you're a real sort of natural communicator. I see you so active on LinkedIn, always talking about sort of really important messages, which, can get a little bit lost, which are very important. And you touched on it earlier. And in fact, we've spoken to kind of other people around the company. Is this kind of support right at the heart of what Setfords does? Just talk me through that a little bit, because it is quite important, isn't it? Because there are competitors that sort of, they kind of look a bit like us and sound a bit like us, but when you actually scrape things away, there's quite a lot of dissimilarities. Yeah.
Quite right. Look, I mean, the times I've spoken to Guy and Chris about this, they set up this firm. Every department they implemented, it was on the basis of, will this benefit the consultant? So being that we're trailblazers in it, we've built this up from scratch and, have introduced absolutely everything that a consultant will need. There are copycats, and with any success, there will be. Mm-hmm. They quite simply haven't put the time in and the thought into it, I would say, as well, that we have as a firm. So the support will range from anything administration support, legal secretarial support, post-completion if you're a property lawyer. Those are very much the day-to-day business support, I would say, along with accounts and compliance. And we also have a lot of business growth support, as you say, your department being one of them, PR. We've got marketing, business development. We've even got a lawyer wellbeing team. Our lawyer wellbeing director, Marissa, was the first of any law firm, not just in the fee share industry as well. So again, showing that we're pioneers and looking to evolve. And it was only until this year that we didn't have the PR department. Again, as far as I'm aware, there may be people who do PR in the other fee share firms, but no one dedicated to doing it day in, day out like yourself. So we just are always first to implement these things that others haven't, and that will continue to be the case.
Yeah. You mentioned wellbeing. Of course, you were in the wellbeing team yourself, I think, weren't you? Were you not?
No. Business development I was in previously.
Brilliant notes I've got. Yeah, terrible. So you've been, how long have you been at Setfords?
Yeah, 4 years. Started off in admin, scanning and filing assistant. That was my job for a few months before the pandemic, before working from home and continuing to work for admin.
Yeah.
Summer of 2020, I moved into business development. I took on more of a sales role, assisting the lawyers with the supplementation of their workload there. During stamp duty deadline, stamp duty holiday, I should say, sorry, that was a challenge. And you do have to learn a lot about so many different areas of law that obviously I had no exposure to previously.
Yeah.
And that sales experience led me quite nicely into doing the recruitment side of things. But both of those experiences have really helped me in selling the business, because I know what admin do. And from working with admin, I know what post-completion and secretaries do. I know what business development do day in, day out.
Yeah.
And I work very closely with wellbeing now, working with Marissa, Harriet. And again, I know exactly what they do. So yeah, I've loved working here. 4 years, coming up in November, third department now. But I think this is the one for me. I think I do it well, and as I say, I do believe in this model, so it makes it a lot easier for me.
Well, I sit a small stone's throw away from you, so I can hear what you do, and of course Rob Young, your colleague in that team. And so yeah, I mean, you sound very professional and very engaged when you're talking on the phone. I can certainly vouch for that. In terms of your sort of non-Setfords life, what do you get up to outside of work? What's the balance that you have? The balance you sell is part of your recruitment role. Where do you get that from?
So a lot of what I like to try and do, annual leave allowance permitting, is going travelling. That's one of my passions. I just got back from 2 weeks travelling around Turkey. That was amazing. But on a more weekly basis, my weekends are mainly spent actually gardening. That's my secondary passion, I would say, behind travelling there. Into my horticulture. I absolutely love it. I love watching things grow and actually reaping the rewards of that as well. Whether that be the flower or in fact the veg or the fruit on that as well. As lame as that might sound, coming from a 24-year-old, absolutely, that's what I'm into. And yeah, that would I say would be my the calming aspect of my life. This can be quite a demanding role. So yeah, it's quite a nice way to unwind at the weekend or in the evenings, weather permitting.
Yeah, no, I was literally thinking just as you were talking about that. I mean, watching things grow, it will naturally sort of slow you down.
Yes,
you can't. You've got to take the impatience out of it. So yeah, no, all good things to do. Hamish, I remember my first meeting with you. Just walking away from that. Well, actually, you walked away from it. I stayed sitting down, but I was so impressed with with how you spoke and how you talked about the business and about what you do. And I think you do leave a mark on pretty much everyone you meet. I mean, we've spoken to a couple of people this morning, and you've sort of come up, and so you're a great sort of first point for people to come into this business, and we really love what you do. And I know it's a really tough job. I mean, those are quite sort of big stretching targets that you have, but we're really grateful that you are one of the people doing it. So
thank you,
Hamish. Thank you for joining us on Open
My pleasure.
Matters.
Thank you very much.
So, continuing now on Open Matters, the Setfords Podcast, we are joined on the line using, I guess, not latest technology, it's just a telephone really, but joined by Hannah Bradley, one of our Setfords consultants who specialises in equine law. Hi Hannah, can you hear me?
Hi Eric, yep, I can hear you loud and clear.
Brilliant, it works. You'd think we'd be beyond celebrating actually having a successful telephone call in this day and age, but that's the way it goes here on Open Matters. We're discovering new things every day. So, Hannah, whereabouts actually are you in the UK? You're sort of up north somewhere, aren't you?
Yep, I'm based up in sunny Lancashire, and it's characteristically rainy today. Yeah.
It's the same everywhere. I can tell you down here is horrible. So classic English start to a conversation talking about the weather. So equine law, just give me a little overview of what's going on there. What sort of matters and cases are you involved with?
Yeah. So I deal with anything that involves horses or their owners or their riders or trainers. So it can be contentious, so disputes, litigation concerning sales or kind of things that have gone wrong with vets or farriers or other professionals. I also deal with kind of the more non-contentious side, which is kind of predominantly agreements for sale, lease, syndicates, anything that kind of party wants to document into writing for their own protection, kind of concerning a horse, I suppose.
And is that a very active sort of practice area of law? Is there a lot going on in equine law world?
Yeah, there's a lot of transactions happening. Horses do change hands for an awful lot of money. And, it is quite surprising because you wouldn't think about selling your house without kind of work or search.
You mean?
Because you would think that.
I think we just.
I suppose this is happening with horses. Some people are kind of selling horses for the same amount of money as you might sell a house without having the same of due diligence and paperwork, and that inevitably leads to some quite serious disputes because actually horses tend to kind of change their opinions about things more than a house does. So yeah, it's an area where it's prone, unfortunately, to litigation and to people being, I suppose, upset about things that have happened.
Yeah, I suppose there's a sort of a traditional way of buying and selling a horse, which might be more about a handshake and less about sort of the contractual side of it. But obviously, are you seeing a sort of an increase in sort of people owning and sort of trading, if that's the right word, sort of buying and selling horses? Is that sort of a growing thing?
Well, I don't know if there's more people that are owning horses, but certainly the boundaries of ownership and the value of horses are always being pushed, and there's more kind of exciting competitions and more prize money being offered, and I think that just fuels the market and the industry to grow more and more, and the value of the horses that can compete at the top levels of competition to keep increasing, and that's just kind of it creates a circular market.
Yeah, no, I understand. You mentioned sort of a little while ago when you were sort of introducing what you do, you mentioned syndicates, and presumably by that you're referring to groups of people that own a racehorse, maybe?
Well, syndicates have traditionally been used in racing, yes, to give individuals an opportunity to be involved in ownership without the kind of quite significant cost burden that can be involved in that kind of thing. But they are now being used in other sectors, including show jumping. It's much more rare, but people are doing that. And I suppose, it is a good opportunity for somebody who might be new to the equestrian world and wants to kind of test ownership and whether it's something for them without having the real significant burden of owning all of the horse, let's say.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
spreading that financial load a little bit. What are the sort of the trends that you're seeing in the sort of the equine world in terms of things coming through? I mean, you mentioned sort of buying and selling, and people, maybe not going through the sort of the paperwork process, the due diligence process that they do. What else is going on in equine world?
Recently, well, not that recently, but there was, you might remember the PPI mis-selling cases from kind of a estate agent.
Yep.
And those rulings had a significant impact on the equestrian world because there's a lot of agents operating in the equestrian world who will kind of introduce buyers and sellers of horses, and they will take a kind of remuneration for their services. The ruling from the PPI mis-selling scandal, as it was called, directly impacts that. And it relates to you have to disclose when you're taking a commission, which is what that case was about. So that's something which is really kind of not that well known really amongst a lot of people that are operating in the sector. So it's something that I do see a reasonable amount of issues over where people, agents might have operated and they might have taken a commission and might not have disclosed that commission, or they might not have fully disclosed it, and that's created a dispute. But one which perhaps not everybody was aware was a real issue.
I see. It doesn't take long, does it, for the unscrupulous to sort of move into it?
I mean, it's not necessarily unscrupulous. I suppose it's just the way things have always been done. And this kind of ruling with the PPI kind of changed all of that and made it so that actually you can't do that anymore.
Okay.
So it's just awareness, I suppose, of how the laws evolve.
But bringing some more transparency, which
exactly, which is now the case with the kind of estate agency side of it.
I see. So if you were sort of giving some do's and don'ts then about buying or selling a horse, what would your sort of top things be?
So I would say just a practical one. Number one, if you're going to view a horse, just try and be as level-headed as possible. And if you're kind of an excitable person, I would take somebody with you who's a bit more of a leveler and a bit more realistic.
Yep.
I would say do as much due diligence as you possibly can do.
Yep.
In the world of the internet now, Google's an amazing thing. You can search the horse's name, search on the various kind of equestrian video sites like Get My Horse, the history of this horse.
Yep.
Ask as many questions as you can in writing of the seller, particularly of things that are important to you.
Yeah.
It might be about its veterinary history or temperament, things like that. And finally, if it's proportionate to do so, you should have a contract, because that's what that's going to protect you in the best way possible if things do go wrong later down the line. So those would be my tips.
And I suppose your point about taking someone with you is about sort of having someone to balance off the emotional response of sort of seeing a horse that you immediately fall in love with, but there's a sort of pragmatic.
It's a really unique kind of combination of emotions, excitement, and kind of attachment, and actually a significant amount of money as well. So it can be a bit of a toxic combination, really, for kind of making the wrong decision, I suppose.
Oh yeah, no, I bet. I can totally imagine, actually. So I read recently that you you've joined the British Horse Racing Authority. You're on their legal panel. Is that right?
Yeah, it's kind of an independent panel that's kind of run by the British Horse Racing Authority, and that panel hears all kinds of investigations and appeals that are, born from racing. Yeah,
I see. And so it means that you're a very respected equine lawyer. You have sort of credibility in order to be invited to join that. And I've noticed that. I mean, we've spoken before, and I've spoken to some magazines, some equine magazines actually, and your name is very well known. So you clearly have a great reputation. Just out of pure interest, actually, you obviously work in the world of horses. What sort of things do you do outside of work? Do you have a horse yourself?
Yeah, I've always had horses, and more recently, I have a kind of small team of miniature horses.
Okay.
Who I show, and will be competing at the Horse of the Year show at the NEC in a couple of weeks.
Really?
With one of them, yeah. Last year I had a baby as well, so been quite busy in the past 12 months.
I bet you have. So it's a real passion. I mean, it's presumably you found your way into equine law because you love, you love horses, presumably.
Yeah, from the kind of day of qualifying as a solicitor, it was always kind of in my line of sight to do that. But it's a really slow burn because kind of operating in the traditional frame of the kind of legal world, in a law firm, it's really hard to develop a niche and to focus really kind of specifically on a detailed level on that niche, because quite reasonably the law firm wants you to service its existing clients in the more general kind of commercial cases, so you don't have the opportunity to really become truly specialist when you're working in that environment. So, but it was a long-standing thing that I wanted to do.
So yeah, some persistence and dedication to get to where you want to be. Well, look, Hannah, thank you so much for joining us. So sorry we had some little technical issues earlier. We will get better at that. But look, thank you so much for sharing a bit about you and what you do. And may we wish you and your miniature horse well at the NEC.
Thank you.
And we will speak again, obviously, in our respective day jobs, and I'm looking forward to that. So thank you very much for joining us on Open Matters today.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. See you.